Welcome to Historic Cane Hill. I'm Executive Director Vanessa McEwen. I'd like to start out by getting kind of a sense of who's in the room. So could I get a show of hands for how many of you is this your first time to Historic Cane Hill? All right, we got a few, wonderful. The mission of Historic Cane Hill is to preserve, connect, and inspire through meaningful connections with history, education, architecture, nature, and the arts. We carry out this mission in many ways by presenting exhibitions like Treasured Chests, 19th Century Furniture by Northwest Arkansas Craftsmen, by hosting programs like tonight's talk with Victoria Chandler, and by holding events like our upcoming Cane Hill After Dark on October 24th. Be sure and mark your calendar for that, and also pick up a schedule on the table on your way out. Today's program is in conjunction with the Treasured Chests Gallery exhibition. And I want to take a moment and thank the many institutions and individuals whose support makes this exhibition, today's program, and really all of Historic Cane Hill's work throughout the year possible. Our presenting sponsors are Paula Irwin, Cityscapes Magazine, and KUAF Public Radio. Our Platinum Program sponsors are Ozarks Electric, Ozarks Go, Kinco Constructors, and Legacy National Bank. Platinum Exhibition sponsors are Adventure Subaru, WER Architects, and the Genevieve M. Pennington Trust Endowment. Gold Program sponsors are Curtis Moore, Farm Bureau Insurance. The Gold Exhibition sponsors are Teresa and Alex Cornett. Silver Exhibition sponsors are Wagner General Contractors, and this exhibition and program is also made possible with support by the Walmart Foundation. If you haven't already done so, I strongly encourage you to check out the Treasured Chests exhibition in the gallery and pick up one of these beautiful Treasured Chests exhibition catalogs designed by our own Amanda Cothran. In addition to the furniture from the Historic Cane Hill Museum, we're excited to have brought together pieces of furniture from Historic Arkansas Museum, from the Fort Smith Museum of History, the Rogers Historical Museum, John Brown University, Siloam Springs Museum, and private collections. We're grateful to these collectors who are the stewards of this very important pieces of material culture that really help highlight the rich furniture making tradition of Northwest Arkansas. Now I'll turn it over to our Director of Arts and Culture and the exhibition curator, Lawrence McElroy, to introduce our speaker. Sure. Thank you.
Victoria is the Curator of Collections and the head of the curatorial department at Historic Arkansas Museum. If you have never been there, you should make a trip down there. It's an incredible institution. She has also been very instrumental in the Arkansas Made project for over a decade. Same thing, if you're not familiar with the Arkansas Made project and their publications, I would encourage you to investigate that. We have their publication up here. We even have them for sale at the museum. Incredible job down there. Victoria is, if you have not met her before, I'm so sorry, because she has an incredible wealth of information about Arkansas history, particularly crafts and furniture. It's mind-boggling. And I just have to say, I'll repeat what Vanessa said. This exhibition, Treasured Chest, would not have been possible without the cooperation and collaboration with Victoria and her staff at Historic Arkansas Museum. So I'm really looking forward to this talk. I know everybody else is, so I'm going to turn it over to Victoria.
That was so kind. Thank you, Lawrence. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm Victoria Chandler. I work at Historic Arkansas Museum. And like Lawrence mentioned, this big tome up here is the Arkansas Made book he was referencing. This, of course, is the decorative arts book, but it has in here a wealth of resources, including the appendix. The appendix in here is for the index of makers, and so it's really great to look through, and you can see all the documented makers so far that we've found working in the state. And it's really wonderful and exciting to be here to see this new exhibition. And I just got to see it for the first time in person. It was so exciting when Lawrence was talking about what works he wanted to loan for the exhibit, and then what other private collecting pieces that he's found. It's just really wonderful. And so I'm so excited to see it in person. And this catalog is really a treasure trove. I'm adding it to our research files because it is a wealth of knowledge, and a show that really hasn't been done before. And like Lauren said, it's about time. And so it's very exciting to see this happen. So I'm going to start. I'm going to just adjust this a little bit. Okay. Is that okay? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is that good? Talk about Arkansas style, but do a little background. Like Lawrence mentioned, I work at the Historic Arkansas Museum. This is a drawing by Max Mayer, who was an architect along with Louise Lefborough, who worked to save an original block of 19th century buildings in downtown Little Rock. This was kind of his view of the future, with skyscrapers in the background and the historic buildings. It kind of looks like that today. But in addition, we now have 3 blocks and a museum center with 7 galleries, and a large, robust collection of about 50,000 objects. Our mission has changed over the years. Our name used to be the Arkansas Territorial Restoration. You might have been familiar with that growing up. And our mission has shifted from communicating the early history of Arkansas, but also now adding in its creative legacy. And that creative legacy is really where Arkansas Made comes in. And it's really the mission of the museum has evolved. And so we're now kind of the Arkansas's Fine and Decorative Arts Museum for representing Arkansas artists. Our founder, Louise Lefborough, she has this great quote, which she says, "A leaky roof, a coonskin cap, a fiddle, and a jug were not the outstanding characteristics of early Arkansas." And that is kind of where this, notion that we're all plagued by the Arkansas traveler and the haunting image that we're a bunch of backwards hillbillies with no culture. And they kind of set out to prove that that's not true, and especially looking at the material culture of Arkansas. In the 1970s, this is the original Arkansas Made team. Swanee Bennett, who is right here, and Bill Worthen, our longtime director of the museum, and their crew of a team, that's Parker Westbrook, or John Banks. I always get them mixed up, but it's Parker, yes. Traversed the whole state, visiting every county, and went into people's private homes, as well as public institutions to document the Arkansas Made pieces that people had. And it's really incredible. And through this, and then also through archival work, scouring the census records, newspapers, tax records, we've been able to document thousands of artisans and the examples of their work throughout the state. So, but for now, we're going to, of course, talk about furniture. And what is Arkansas style? There's not really a singular definition. There's not, can't point to something and be like, that's what represents Arkansas. That's like most of American furniture. Arkansas is defined by its makers for the most part, and their origins, where they come from, as well as the vernacular forms that people create. You might call it backwoods Baroque, or what furniture might have lacked in high form, it's certainly made up for in style and construction and materials. There, of course, are more rural interpretations of more popular styles and what, using materials, what people had on hand, and then, of course, bespoke work and custom pieces. So now we're going to take a look at the Arkansas cabinet makers. This is a great photograph from Fort Smith. Fort Smith back in the day was kind of the Grand Rapids of the West, especially around the turn of the century. We've documented over 1,500 furniture makers and over 1,600 locations across the state. The heyday of cabinet making in the state was really between 1850 and 1880, ranging from there were around 215 to 315 cabinet makers active during that period. And then there's a brief surge in the 1910s, like I talked about it, in Fort Smith. The largest concentration of cabinet makers outside of that Fort Smith hub was in Pulaski County, and we have documented over 60 cabinet makers working just in Washington County. While many later cabinet makers working in the state claim Arkansas origins, majority are not from Arkansas. And the documented pieces that I'm showing here today, most of them were made by transplants from across the country or from Europe. We have documented over 120 cabinet makers from Tennessee who were born there, over 50 from Kentucky, and over 70 documented cabinet makers hailed from what was Germany at the time. And of course, there's a large number that also come from Great Britain and France, with a mass exodus of artisans from those countries during this period. So we're going to first examine the works by some of these transplants, many of them worked in other cities before coming to Arkansas. Very few people, especially coming from Europe, went directly to Arkansas. And there's one of my favorite quotes by an Arkansas cabinet maker. I'm going to read for you. It's a little long, but it's just really perfect. It's Thomas Spotswood Blennerhassett, who was born in Ireland in 1812, and he worked here nearby in Fayetteville. So here he reads: "Cabinetware manufactured by a regular bred cabinet maker. I would respectfully inform the citizens of Fayetteville and surrounding country that I have determined to carry on the cabinet business in all its branches right here where I am and can be contented to remain for the rest of my life, because I've been in every city from the prairie to the sea, but of all the towns this mountain city is for me. The manufacture of shocking machines have not having quite used up all the lumber in this state. I chanced to get some, and having had 20 years experience in the manufacture of furniture in the cities of New York, Charleston, New Orleans, St. Louis, and Cincinnati, Texas, I challenge and dare competition in quality or style of work. For independence is the soul of ambition, and I will try to prove it by manufacturing all kinds of cabinet works at such prices that will convince the public that Cincinnati galvanized furniture or work made at any of the Hessian abolition factories is no value for money. Every little helps, and if the people will only patronize their own mechanics so as to keep the money here, instead of supporting Hessian mechanics, who, having swarmed into all the towns and cities with their wooden shoes and copper cent prices, have driven from their homes the descendants of 76, never more to behold the graves of their fathers, they will benefit themselves and then create a competition among us mechanics here. For honorable competition is the life of the trade. Having seen good prices paid for a shocking rough article of cabinet work since my arrival here, I know I can furnish better article for less money. As follows: breakfast tables for $4 and $5, fancy French beds for $5, dining tables for $7 to $8, handsome plain center tables from $10, single tables for $5, and all other work in proportion at low and fair prices. I will have in the spring mahogany veneering, haircloth, glass plates, and materials for making from a stool, music stool, to a billiard table. Then hurrah for the highest persimmon and the longest pole. Thomas Blennerhassett in Fayetteville, and that's in 1854. It's just a wonderful example of the trade that's going on there, and they're colorful examples of how they're advertising, because one thing we're thinking about when we're talking about furniture is that we often have this notion that, especially in the West out here in Arkansas, which was the West at the time, at the edge of frontier, that things were slow and we couldn't get much, and we had to make do on the frontier, and that's not true. You could readily get anything in the world. We could ship it up from New Orleans or from New York through the rivers. Everything was readily available. By the 1820s, there's a famous form of chairs called Hitchcock chairs you might be familiar with. Hitchcock was kind of the IKEA of his day, and so he had figured out how to disassemble his chair and make it so that furniture sellers, not cabinet makers, could reassemble his chairs and sell them at prices, and so everything was kind of readily available. So we're kind of, the cabinet makers are competing not just with fellow cabinet makers in their area, but also big manufacturing places from across the country. These are three wonderful advertisements from across the state that I really just love, especially looking at visually what they're using to advertise. There's William England. He was from South Carolina. William Drake from New England, and then John Onstadt from Kentucky. Fun fact: John Onstadt worked here in Fayetteville. I keep saying here, not in Fayetteville. In Fayetteville, and he actually married fellow Fayetteville cabinet maker John Bowie's daughter. So a little inside tray. This wonderful piece is made by a Pennsylvania transplant named William Curry, and he was working in Batesville at the time, which of course Batesville was a huge town, especially in the antebellum period. And this is just a beautiful circa 1850 table with inlay in just classic form. Here's another example, or a new example, by John Bowie, who worked here in Fayetteville. This beautiful sideboard. This is at Historic Arkansas Museum. And I included two of his advertisements, but I was going to read another one. He came from Tennessee. He's one of those over 200 Tennesseans who came here. He arrived around 1850 and then continued working, it seems like, until the late 1880s, maybe 1890s, before his death. And he had many partners at the time. So he has a Fayetteville Cabinet Shop, the undersigned, long established and long successful in the line of cabinet making, tender their thanks to the community for the past patronage and solicit its continuance. They have for sale at all times or will manufacture to order all articles demanded by the public: bureaus, bedsteads, tables, center tables, wardrobes, secretaries, safe, washstands, etc. Their work is highly finished, substantial, and of newest and most approved patterns. The public are invited to an inspection of it. The lumber of which our furniture is made has been selected with care and with a view to producing good work. It is sound and has been seasoned for many years, and we turn out no job that is not composed of well-seasoned materials. We are prepared and will at all times manufacture coffins of every style, size, and finish according to orders submitted to us. The prices which govern us in our business are cheap and satisfactory to all purchasers. And that's at the time he's partnered with Bowers and Bowie. That's in 1853. And I bring that up, or read that quote as well, because to emphasize that so often furniture makers at this time are often undertakers. When they make coffins, it makes sense. They're making articles of wood. And actually, as as furniture does become largely manufactured by the turn of the century, most cabinet makers we can see either they pass away, they shift to strictly farming, or they shift to undertakers. And that's kind of the direct route. It's similar for like gunsmiths change to locksmiths. They have the tools already and the materials, and so it just makes sense. So now we're going to switch to the Europeans who came to Arkansas. Francis Omar was a Frenchman who was born around 1818. And he came to New Orleans in 1853, but by 1855 had moved to Batesville. He actually settled right outside in Deshay and had a farm there, but he serviced the community of Independence County, and he worked there for the remainder of his life. All the works here have been identified by Swanee Bennett and Dr. Daniel Fagg in the late 1960s and 80s, based on style, provenance, and family documentation that we have. Many of the pieces were discovered over the years in local families' homes in the immediate vicinity of Omar's farm, and they all resemble this French-influenced vernacular furniture of 19th century Creole Louisiana, tied to his own upbringing in France at the time, but also time spent cabinet making in New Orleans. Most of his works are not pinned, but mortised and neatly rabbeted. This bed is just an incredible example of one of his works. One of my favorite pieces of Arkansas furniture is the little table on the right. It's a little cabriole leg table, and it's a fine example of his work. It's also interesting because, it's made around 1860s, and it's so out of fashion by this time, but it's just, that's what he wants to make, and it's just this lovely piece. He also has this lovely set of drawers with inlay. They're really wonderful. Both works are at Historic Arkansas Museum. On the left is this beautiful secretary. And this kind of, the lotus shape at the top of this piece is very popular at France during this time. And this is a beautiful medical cabinet that's missing some of the knobs, but that's really just beautifully constructed, both made by Omar. Another French Canadian, though, was Michael J. Plouffe, and he came from Canada to Little Rock and worked here. He actually came in 1864 during the Civil War and worked until the late 1880s. All three pieces that I'm showing you here are actually part of a bed set that was made by one family for, according to the family, it was made for the birth of their son, Alonzo H. Brown, on November 1st in 1866. The backside of the headboard of the bed is signed Michael J. Plouffe, Little Rock, Arkansas. And so his interpretation is very much of this Renaissance and Rococo styles, and he's kind of blending all these together. Interestingly, this wonderful bureau, we have other examples from other Arkansas states where they're more wealthier families who have purchased from, they purchase out east or go up to Ohio. And we have other examples that are almost identical to this. But we know that it's signed and it came from this set. And it just shows also what he's competing with manufactured furniture. And so he's, whether or not he was making it cheaper or what, it's just this really wonderful example. And then this is one of the most beautiful pieces. This beautiful corner cupboard that we know from family history was made by a British journeyman cabinet maker who came here and traded room and board for the construction of this piece. It's really lovely. And from 1820 to 1850, there were over 15,000 furniture makers advertising their services across Britain and Ireland. So each one was competing with this anonymous artisan before he came to America. You know, it might seem like moving across to America would greatly reduce your struggle to find work, but, you know, during that period, that same period, there are over 320 furniture makers just in Arkansas alone. The state's population and the corresponding number of prospective clients was also relatively small, which pushed the journeyman to new, untapped areas of the American frontier. And of course, like I mentioned, tools of the trade, accomplished journeymen would carry their tools with them wherever they went, prepared for work. And we often see migrant craftsmen settling just briefly here, especially as westward expansion is happening before moving elsewhere, especially down to Texas. And of course, can't talk about furniture in Arkansas without talking about the Sagers. You can see numerous examples of their work in this incredible exhibition. They're really wonderful. The story of the Sager brothers illustrates the possible successes for early craftsmen on this edge of civilization. The brothers Simon and Christian Sager were both natives of Germany, and they arrived in Benton County from Missouri in 1839, and they're the earliest documented furniture makers in that county. Christian and his brother Frederick Green worked as partners in the cabinet making business for decades, simultaneously operating a sawmill, gristmill, and general store. Again, wood related trades. By 1850, Christian was operating a water-powered sawmill and cabinet-making business in Benton County, and he employed 4 men. And according to the 1850 Products of Industry schedules, Christian and Frederick both used considerable amounts of walnut, cherry, and pine lumber for their furniture. The beautiful sideboards, tables, bedsteads, bureaus, and chairs they produced from these woods all contain similar hallmark characteristics. They all produced consistently quality work with common elements, including extensive lathe work, careful attention to double mortise joints and petite dovetails, overall structural heft and strength, and very little use of molding planes. Christian lived until 1872, and Simon was murdered in his home in 1864. There's no signed pieces by the Sager brothers, although we have their incredible ledger, which is this trove of information about our cabinet making during the 19th century. Frederick Green stopped identifying himself as a cabinet maker by the 1870s, and then he moved to Texas with his family, where he lived the rest of his life. The remains of their examples of their work are in the Rogers Historical Museum, the Kansas City Museum, Siloam Springs Museum, and private collections. This just shows the multifaceted business that had been grown by the Sager and Greens, and its account of the success of furniture making, if you put in the hard work. So these are some examples of their work. You can see this chest of drawers on exhibit here, and a wonderful bed. These 2 beds are at the Rogers Historical Museum. They're both really incredible. And you can kind of see there's a little bit of, there's like a Biedermeier style, which was popular in Germany at the time, which kind of, you can see some influence in Sager's work. This is one of the best pieces of Arkansas furniture, especially because it's a perfect example of faux graining. It's a fancy chair. You can also see this on exhibit. Fancy, if you don't know that term, kind of the first American style. After we gained our independence, we had American fancy. Everything was fancy. Fancy ketchup, fancy dress, fancy chairs, you name it, they called it fancy. And fancy furniture, especially this chair, you can see the kind of the curved back. This is just a prime example. Turned legs, often woven sleeves, and often faux grained. They would take any type of wood and faux grain it to be a different type of wood, or it was brightly painted in these bright yellows and blues and greens. To our modern sensibilities, they probably would have been a little garish. They loved like greens and reds combined. American Fancy is one of my favorite styles. It's just so colorful and lively. And this is really great as well because not only you can see the faux graining, but you can see this gold stenciling. And this is often mimicking a Hitchcock chair that I mentioned earlier with that gold stenciling. Hitchcock are the black chairs with gold stenciling. You know, might ring some bells. Just beautiful, beautiful example. Another German transplant was John Roderweiss, and he settled with his family in Jacksonville in Pulaski County sometime between 1875 and 1880, so a little bit later. He worked most of his life as a carpenter, but he also made furniture for personal use. And like so many German immigrants arriving to America at this time, he arrived in Arkansas with an artisan trade he had learned in his native homeland. He did not advertise his work in local newspapers, and he also farmed, like so many rural Arkansans and artisans living here. The scant personal belongings that we know of, a handful of tables and 2 photographs, one of which you can see here, through those, we know that Roderweiss, whether he was building a house or working on a table, he worked with skill and artistry. There are decorative carvings, signature of Roderweiss's work, whether they adorn his furniture or architectural details of this vernacular style home, which you can see. Features of its furniture, such as which you can see too here, the dark ebony stain and simple angular forms hint that Roderweiss was in tune with the East Lake furniture style popular in his day. And whether or not he was consciously stylish, he nevertheless left a creative thumbprint on the otherwise ordinary rural way of life. That's a candle stand, which we are going to see in a photograph of his interior just here in a sec. Another beautiful table. And just incredible work. And there are other documented houses in Jacksonville in the area that we know Roderweiss must have worked on. And you can see some of these details. Beautiful, beautiful tableware. And then that's the interior. And you can kind of see next to the lamp, the candle stand. And I forgot to upload, we had it colorized for an exhibit about a while ago. It's just really wonderful. And that's his family. I love the girl playing the guitar with her, but it's really great work. And just real quick, it's like the incredible wallpaper. Anyway, it's, back to the garish and bold taste of the 19th century. Of course, we cannot discuss artisan works without examining a few of the few documented pieces that we know were made by enslaved individuals who worked here in the state. On the left is a beautifully constructed table that family documentation states was made by Jeff, who was an enslaved man owned by Elizabeth and Alexander Reed. He worked for Elizabeth's father, William McGarrah of Fayetteville. McGarrah allowed Jeff to make furniture on his own time after dark and keep the money he earned. Jeff and an enslaved woman named Caroline were given to Elizabeth as a wedding gift, which was really popular at the time to gift slaves as wedding gifts. Of course, that's all family provenance, and there is documentation that they owned a man and a woman that fit this story, and so we're corroborating through that. It's a beautiful table, and it's at Shiloh, I believe. And then on the right is this really incredible rocking chair that was made for Lorenzo Gibson by one of his enslaved artisans in Pulaski County. It also, you notice it's a little wide and large, and it seems to corroborate the family history that Gibson was a man of great height and girth. And it's beautiful. I didn't get a detailed shot, but of the right here you can see where they've planed those rocking styles. Excuse me. And this is all furniture that was made for the Mallet family down in Tulip in Dallas County. This was made for their house that was built in 1850, and they had a large plantation, and it most likely would have been made by enslaved individuals. This is but a fraction. They still have, I think there's like 15 pieces that are in the family made during this period. They're just really wonderful. The bed is just beautifully decorated. Really, really wonderful piece. And then, of course, the most common type of cabinet maker here is the farmer cabinet maker. This is true of most artisans working in the state and elsewhere in America, is that they couldn't, solely sustain their lifestyle based on just their trade alone, and so they often turn to farming. So when we're going through the census records, you'll see people are farmers, but we know that we have documented works that they're cabinet makers, or we have other periods where they're active cabinet makers, but they when the census comes around, they call themselves farmers. Excuse me. And this piece was made by Lawrence Green. Lawrence Thomas, I always mess this up, in Greene County. And it's a beautiful example. He came from Kentucky, and you can see in this piece, you'll find other Kentucky examples, especially with his inlay of, this is very popular style. It's really beautiful. He came here in the 1840s, and he's in the area where it's the only part of Arkansas where the tulip grows, tulip tree. And so that's made with that wood. Now we have the hobbyist. These pieces were made by Captain Samuel French. He's, just a gem that we've discovered. He was stationed here in Arkansas from the 1840s to 1850s. He went to West Point, graduated, was a military man, not a cabinet maker by trade, purely in the military, and he made these incredible works, and we've been able to document them. The gaming table on your right you see here actually had a note attached, signed in French's hand, talking about that he made it. And then on the left is this incredible bed that he made for his daughter. I wish you could zoom in because it's just this. It's massive also. It's accompanied by a chest of drawers that I didn't get to include that has all these different figurines. And then there's 2 panels which are on exhibit here. On the bedstead, the headboard, it kind of depicts life on the frontier. And then the panels are a different story. The panels depict, there's a story of French's wife. She was out in their cabin, and supposedly Native American came and attacked their home, and she killed them, which you can see on the left. And then she goes to the priest and asks for absolution. And so it's very vivid. A lot for a little girl bedstead, but it's a really incredible example of just, he just made these just because. And it's just a wonderful example of artisanal work. And now we're kind of going to get into the vernacular styles that were made across the state. Up first is this wonderful Boonesville food press, and it's got this beautiful turkey cutouts. It's actually, when you look up close, you can see pencil marks for where they had a compass and they drew a circle. And whether or not they just decided not to make the flower, like to repeat the first flower up above or do a turkey print, we're not sure. But it's really wonderful, and it's got the wire mesh on the inside. These are 2 of the earliest documented pieces made in Arkansas. The one on the left is a washstand made of cypress that was made for William Woodruff, who's the founder of the Arkansas Gazette. And this was made when he was down at the Arkansas Post before everyone moved up to Little Rock. And then on the right is a sugar chest on stand, which is very rare for Arkansas, very much a Kentucky style of furniture, and going out of fashion during this period, made around the 1820s in Dardanelle, which was also an early settlement here. And it's beautifully painted. You can kind of tell it's got some green paint. Again, American Fancy, it would have been very much brightly painted. The next piece is also one of my favorites. I think I'm saying that too often, but this is one of the most incredible works. It was made at the Dwight Mission in Russellville. So in the 1800s, of course, you all are familiar with the numerous Native American missionary schools that were set up across the country. Interestingly, the Cherokees actually reached out to the Presbyterian Church to ask them to establish a missionary. It was very controversial at the time, it still is in hindsight, but they set up a school in Russellville, which is today Russellville, and then moved out to Oklahoma. This piece was made by the Cherokee students there at the time. It's very primitive. You can see on the back the hatchet marks from where they're constructing the boards. It's very thick and heavy, and remarkably, it was in use until it was collected by Henderson State Museum. It's painted. Our conservator, Andy Savosky, who's retired now, did a remarkable study to reveal the paint layers and to see just everything, all the styles that have taken place. The last kind of paint that you can see on the left side is really from like the 1940s. That's kind of like, or 1930s. And then it kind of goes backwards. And so you see this 1940s and going back all the way to the 1820s and it's faux grained. Like I said, everything is faux grained. Every wood gets elevated. The yellow was pretty quickly painted afterwards. That light blue is very popular. It gets faux grained again. It gets this little darker shade of wood and then bright green. And so it just kind of changes over time, and you kind of see this evolution. A lot of furniture pieces that we have, unless they're, beautifully preserved and intentionally made to be just strictly wooden furniture, a lot of pieces are painted and the paint has just worn over time. This really fun vernacular piece on the left is a jelly cupboard, and it was made by Ulrich Ulmer and Helena in 1900. And his family legend is that him and his family came on a barge to Helena, and the wood from the barge, which I'm not sure how he got that, is what he used to construct this piece. It's really strange. It's very much vernacular in that form. And then on the right is a beautiful blanket chest that was made in Fayetteville around 1850, and it's quite large. The piece on the left is this beautiful ladderback rocking chair that was made around 1870 in Yell County. And then on the right, this piece is actually on exhibit here, and it's one of my favorite pieces. But it's incredible because you can see that they would have turned this post and then cut it in half and then attached it to the front. And it's just this beautiful piece, also made in Fayetteville, or in Washington County around 1860s. This is a great vernacular corner cupboard. When we acquired this piece, there was a dirt dauber's nest inside, and there was loads of newspaper lining the back, which you can kind of see the remnants of, and it was in a barn. But it's really beautiful, all this detail. It was made or owned by William Bonahan, who was an early settler of Madison County around 1850. And it's got this great dental molding at the top. The handle is still original, made out of wood. It's just really a beautiful piece, very country in style, but they elevated it with all these different details. These are two of the most impressive pieces of Arkansas furniture, both in style and form, but also in size. They're quite large wardrobes and clothes press. The one on the left is a walnut and pine wardrobe that was made by John Lancaster in Round Bottom, Izard County around 1850. It's a beautiful piece, really wonderful. It's on permanent loan to the Historic Arkansas Museum. And the one on the right is a cherry and pine wardrobe that was made around 1870 for the Wade House in Fayetteville. And we have records that they were making furniture for the house as it was being constructed. And so there's this wardrobe, and there's a couple other pieces that are noted. And it's just a beautiful, like classic kind of Arkansas style. It's really beautiful. Fancy chairs again. The two on the left are from you can find at Prairie Grove, and these are classic fancy chairs, and they would have had most likely embroidered seats or at some point put in. These are just really, really wonderful. And then I love this chair on the left because it's kind of a ladder back interpretation of a fancy chair. You can briefly see how it curves back. And it has some detailing. It was made by Jared Martin, who was a blacksmith in Little Rock, who settled in the as early as the 1820s. He actually went to Arkansas Post first, but it was probably made around the 1840s when he settled more permanently in Little Rock. It's really beautiful. These two are works that are that were documented by the Arkansas Made team, hence the black and white slides. We haven't been able to get new photographs. The one on the left we should, though, is from the Dr. Purdom house that down in Old Washington in Hibbston County, and it's a medical cabinet. Dr. Purdom, it was his medical cabinet, and it was made around 1855. And then the one on the right is a cupboard that was made in Northwest Arkansas. It's a beautiful example. The detail on the bottom is actually very reminiscent of French Creole furniture during this period, with this decorative molding or carving and stuff. These are classic vernacular styles, very a classic ladder back with little acorn finials on top. Just that when you look at a ladder back, that's a ladder back. And then the one on the right is this beautiful vernacular side table made in Garland County. I love the crystal finials that you can see that have dropped down, and it just seems like they found an assortment of wood pieces and they assembled this table together. It's really, really wonderful. Probably made around the 1890s. This piece is one of the few parquetry examples that we have. And this was actually made by inmates at Tucker Prison. And so, prisons, especially during the early 20th century, labor was made in different fashions. And so they often made furniture pieces. This is like, it's just breathtaking and just so detailed in person. We don't know the names of the inmates who worked on this. Of course, it was gifted to the warden, but it's really wonderful example of parquetry work and different wood specimens across the state. It's really, really beautiful. The only other really great parquetry example is a clock that's at the old State House that I didn't include, but it's was made for the World's Fair. So it's like purposely trying to show off the woods of Arkansas. And I believe that's on permanent exhibit there. And then lastly, because I'm going to talk too much, but the one on the left is this beautiful kids high chair, also from the Dr. Purdom House in Old Washington, and it's just this really lovely example. And then the two on the right this is a photograph from the WPA photographs, and it was made by farmers at Chico Farms in the 1930s. And it's just, they're just making furniture for the sake of making furniture, and just lovely, lovely examples of what people can think of. So yes, I know I feel like I've talked a lot about Arkansas furniture, but they're really wonderful. And we're always on the lookout for more to new pieces for the Arkansas Made team to research and document. We just want to document, if nothing else, to have a record that these pieces exist for future scholars to study and compare styles. And so you can always reach out. All my contact information is on the Historic Arkansas Museum website. And we have a great Facebook page, Arkansas Made, and where we post an object of the day, which is a labor of love. And so there's lots of stuff to reach out to via social media or elsewhere. So yes. Do y'all have any questions? I know that was.
The piece that was made by the inmates, do you know around what time that was made?
Yeah, it was around the 1920s. Yeah, 1920s, 1930s.
How would they have gotten all the wood?
They would have provided it. The warden and his people who worked there provided materials. There's different, we have examples of leather work and other crafts that they made while in the prison. The idea was is keeping inmates busy, and then it was using their hands, and so it was a useful skill. Yeah, it's really incredible.
Do you know if their woodworking was taught as part of it?
I don't know if it's documented.
Those skills, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Of course, Tucker and then oh gosh, what's the other prison? Have pretty brutal histories of farm labor, especially. But so the daughter of the warden, I believe that's right, donated her family's inmate collection, essentially, of all these crafts, and some of them were made for her and her sister and other things. That's loosely said it was made for them. And they have dolls, leather work, like I mentioned. They made things from wallets to moccasins, all this stuff. And so I'm not sure there's documentation of classes offered or something like that, but there's a multitude of material culture from these prisons that remains. Yeah.
Did the Sagers and other cabinet makers here employ the journeyman from the east?
Yeah.
I think we learned a good deal about the black journeyman who came from the east early on.
Yes, occasionally they do, and there's I think it's in the 1850s, 60, and 70. There's industry schedules for across the state, and those have a lot of documentation for insight into what the businesses are doing. I think I mentioned, it says what kind of woods they're working with. It will say how many people they employ. Sometimes we'll see a cabinet maker advertising his services, and he'll say that he has a different type of artisan working with him in his shop, that sometimes we don't know who that person is. In the census records, a lot of times when artisans bring in people, we can see individuals in their household, and if it's not one of their blood relatives, and if it will often fit that it's an artisan who works for them, who happens to be living on their near or in their house. So
does that say that when you show something
yeah.
in the state rooms, that it's from their shop?
Yes.
Not necessarily them as artisans.
Yes, yeah, from their shop, yes. And a lot of these cabinet makers, you'll see, like I mentioned, Bowie, John Bowie, they're in partnership with others. And so it's either two working together and they apprentice people, or they'll hire people, or it'll be a large shop. The Fort Smith furniture making, which I did not really get into, that kind of started with a couple different furniture makers who were working in the Fort Smith area, and then they eventually start bringing in furniture makers from Ohio, from across the country, in mass, and then that's when their manufacturing centers kind of explode there.
Were the designs done by the owners of the company,
Mm-hmm.
and the journeyman made those, or did the journeyman bring their Ohio?
Yeah, it was
Ohio
yes, definitely a mix. And so people, some cabinet makers, you can say, have like strong opinions and styles, but often when you're looking at there's a lot of catalogs that are left from the Fort Smith furniture manufacturers, and you can see different styles that almost mimic the same styles that are happening across the country. So that, one, they're just trying to compete with what's being imported into the state. But then there's a mix of new styles coming in from these new artisans working in the shops with the old styles. And then, of course, they're having to deal with the materials they're using here. So the different woods and how that changes things or elevates things. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you go back to
Yeah.
the chair that was embroidered? That.
Yeah.
Who did this? Or do we know?
We don't know. The Prairie Grove battlefield, they have this documented. I believe it's a set of 4 fancy chairs, and it was from a local Prairie Grove estate that they said was made by a local cabinet maker. And so they don't have the original seats either. I'm not sure if they were just worn over time or what happened. I'm not sure. Really beautiful though. And often these chairs, we have some examples of, they're not Arkansas made, but they're from Arkansas families that they brought over from the East, and they changed the seats over time and updated with the styles as well, but kept the original seats. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I'm probably going to butcher the name.
Oh, yeah.
There's a native wood here. Chinkapin?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Have you found any examples of furniture made from that wood?
No, not that I'm aware of. People really stuck with their cherry and pine are really two most popular. Walnut, you'll have some tulip poplar, some maple, but they really stick with those materials. And then we'll get a lot of pieces that are veneered with imported woods. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
oak wasn't used that much in furniture?
No, not really, which is interesting. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, we don't have very many examples. Often we'll have, when you have furniture, not necessarily in chairs, well, remind me to come back to oak, but when you have a piece, sometimes like that, a cupboard or where there's different parts, there'll be a primary wood, and that forms the main body. And then whether or not it's knobs or drawers or the materials they're dovetailing with in the drawers, so like the front will match the rest of the body, but then the interior pieces are made with a secondary wood. White oak was used for weaving, and so often almost all the woven seats are made with white oak slats. And then, of course, made with baskets as well. And so, when we're documenting Arkansas furniture makers, we kind of have these adjacent trades. And so, what people are often making they're making brooms, which are made out of wood. They're making baskets, which are all made out of wood. Sometimes they're making mattresses in the same trade. It's just all these adjacent things to furniture and wooden materials that are used. Yeah.
About I have a house in that was built in 1885,
Oh.
and it's framed in red oak.
Oh, wow.
It's entirely framed in red oak, but all the trim
Mhm.
is clear pine.
Oh, interesting.
So pine was considered to be fancier.
Yeah, yeah.
Or more desirable.
Yes.
The oak was so common they used it for framing.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, there's, when I was talking about faux graining, pine faux graining was popular. Of course, the more exotic woods like mahogany, Brazilian rosewood, these fancy things that were all imported to America, they were often mimicked to look like that. But if you had a cheap wood, you would often take it and make it into look like pine. I know that there's a lot of New England examples of those where there are oak pieces and they made them look like pine, which seems cheap to us in reverse. Where there are plenty here, but it's just interesting what it's very much varies from where trees are more, where they grow in abundance across the country.
How do they do the fake graining? Was it burning or painting?
It's painting. There's, I wish I had included it. We had, it's still a business, and there's a couple artisans still working in the state. It's painting, and so often we documented these painters they're often called ornamental painters for our fine art chapter for fine arts, because it's kind of a lot of painters eventually became self-taught portrait painters, etc., and that's very common, especially in New England and other parts of the country. But they would be ornamental painters, so they have these great advertisements. So they're talking about rosewood, marbleizing. They could marbleize a fireplace and make it faux marble. Kind of any material they would fake for you and paint on your house to elevate. So if you had a wood mantle, they could make it look like it was fancy Egyptian marble. And so it's very interesting. But the faux graining is so, of course, it's how you layer the colors to present the different shades of the wood, but also then there's different brushes they would use. We work with the company in Little Rock to do a lot of faux graining for some of our exhibit projects, but also for our houses. So it's really wonderful. And then I'm blanking her name right now, who she faux grained the Presbyterian Church. Becky Witzel, who's retired. She is a master artisan. And then and I'm of course blanking on the people we work with, but it's a father and son, and they did the work at the Capitol Hotel for a lot of their columns and do work across the state. David Zollner, that's it, yes.
They
So,
did the faux graining
Yes.
in the Presbyterian Church
Yes.
here in Cane Hill.
yeah. So it's really wonderful. And those are the only two people I know that are doing it right. I mean, it's not with like a stencil or anything. It's really incredible to watch them work. We had an exhibit up at the museum called Conspicuous Consumption for a while that was looking at trends in consumerism in 19th century Arkansas, and we had him paint this different sections of wood that were advertised as being faux grained, and it was just mesmerizing to watch him work. And you didn't, he painted just solid stripes of paint on the wall at first, and you didn't know what it was going to do. He had these assortment of brushes that he used, and it's really wonderful. Yeah.
Do they do that on the bare wood?
Mm-hmm.
Not on a finished?
Yeah, not on a finish. They would do it on the bare wood most likely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is often like why things chip and flake off over time. And the earlier paint, of course, especially if it's more vibrant colors, things weren't dye fast until later, and so the colors become more potent over time. But brown furniture definitely becomes the trend after the Civil War, late Civil War, till later. Yeah. Do you have any more questions? Well, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. This is wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Victoria. That was fascinating. I learned all of it. Like, it was all brand new for me. So I really appreciate you coming and taking the time to educate us on this beautiful stuff. So I'm Amanda Cawthron. She kind of mentioned me when I was counting you a bit earlier. I run programs and events here at Historic Cane Hill full time. I want to thank our sponsors once more for allowing this program to happen tonight, and also for making it possible for us to have the exhibition down in the gallery. Thank you guys for coming out on a Thursday night. I know that most of you are probably not Cane Hill locals, although we could make you one if you want to be. But I do appreciate you taking the time to come to drive out here to see us. Lawrence just excused himself because the gallery is going to be open again for a bit. If you haven't had a chance to see the exhibition, it's worth you taking a bit more time tonight to either walk or drive down to the gallery and make sure that you get to see that. If you can't stay tonight, or if you'd like to come back and bring a friend, we are open Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 10 to 2, and this particular exhibition is open through October 25th. Because they pay me full time to put on fun things to do here, I'm going to tell you about the things you want to come back for, okay? So this first one, if you don't already have your tickets, I'm just doing a tease for you. But on October 19th, which is a Sunday, we have the Symphony of Northwest Arkansas's Sona Beyond quartet will be here. The tickets have already all been spoken for, but we do have a wait list if you want us to let you know if somebody changes their mind. There are 2 performances. We doubled it from the capacity last year, and we still sold out in a week. So it's just a really wonderful opportunity. That will be in the 1981 Presbyterian Church, but you're going to have another chance to come back in just a second. I'll get to it. But before that, on October 24th, we have Cane Hill After Dark, which is our spookier side of the Ozarks. This year's speaker is Brooks Blevins, and he's going to be presenting Fierce and Fantastical Ozark Creatures. Now, this is a fun event. It's a 21 and over event because we are doing kind of a spooky side. It's only a $5 admission, but if you're a Cane Hill member, you get in for free. I'm going to remind you that Historic Cane Hill is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with the mission to preserve, connect, and inspire you through meaningful experiences with history, education, architecture, and the arts. And so if you're interested in helping us preserve those missions, $35 for an individual or $50 for a family gets you that whole year. You get in free to Cane Hill After Dark. Then you're going to come back on November 1st, which is just that next weekend, and have the Trailblazers History Hike with us. Susan Young from Shiloh Museum, previously of Shiloh Museum, now one of our board members, is going to do a walking tour of our campus and give you kind of some behind the scenes digs about like what fun stories you haven't yet heard associated with our architecture and the significant spots on campus. That's a 2 p.m. walk on November 1st. Then I told you we're going to have another chance to come into the church. On December 6th, we have an encore presentation of George West and Star Mitchell out of Little Rock. They will be doing fiddle and dulcimer and other like old-time Ozark country holiday classics at 2 p.m. Tickets will be required for that. It is a free event, but there's a strict 100 capacity because order the fire marshal. So you're going to want to go ahead and get those tickets. They're probably going to release tomorrow because I'm going on vacation and they need to get released before I leave for vacation. So by Saturday, you should be able to reserve your seats for that. It is 2 p.m., also free. And because you will all be members at that point, there is a members reception up here in the college building to say thanks for being a supporter. So this is really the best time of year to get your membership because you've got all these free things. You've got your Cane Hill After Dark tickets for free. You've got your Trailblazers History Hike. You've got your reception. And then before your membership expires next year, you will have gotten free tickets to the Harvest Festival. So if I haven't convinced you yet, then come back and talk to me after I let you go here in just a second. I think that's pretty much everything that we had to say for the night. I'm going to remind you to be safe going home, as the wise philosopher Russell Cawthron regularly says, if you're going over 45, you're deer hunting. It's not a joke. We've had people leave our house I happen to be married to Russell. We've had people leave our house, and we've given them this wisdom, and then they have called us from Fayetteville and said, we had a deer. We were going over 45. I don't want you to have to do that. So go slowly, take your time, but come back and see us as soon as you can.